Hello everyone, my name is Aaron Morris and I am the creator of FSAC, Flight Simulator Adventure Compiler. This is a program I wrote about 10 years ago in Windows C++ and I've recently updated as a web application. So right now we're looking at the login screen to FSAC, Flight Simulator Adventure Compiler, and we can go ahead and use the demo account to log in. And we're going to go ahead and create a new script. So you want to click on the Create New FSAC Script button, a little green button up there. And we're going to go ahead and rename the script because the default name when you create a script is New FSAC Script. So we'll give something a little bit more descriptive. Call it FSAC Demo and click the Submit button. And need to get rid of that banner. Right. And when you create a new script, there is a segment that is already created called the flight segment, and it is the initialization flight segment. And it is at this point that we want to enter in any script initialization. Right now, there is one important script initialization you'll probably want to make when you're developing the script, and that is to enable segment debug. And the way that you do that is that you click on Cockpit FSAC. Cockpit FSAC will be where all of your script configurations will be maintained. I just thought that the cockpit would be a good place to put it. And select Enable FSAC Segment Debug and leave the switch to on. So now what that will do is that when the script is run in Flight Simulator, you will be able to see which segment you're on. Right now, we only have one segment. I'll go back a little bit and show you what I mean by segments. So let's look at this script that's already created. And you can see there are a number of different segments. And all these different segments are different pieces of code that run at a different time in the adventure. So when you're running this the script in Flight Simulator, you'll know exactly where you are in your script by the segment. All right. So we'll go back and go back to our script, our newly created script, which has only one segment. And in that segment, we set the segment debug setting. So now for our first segment, let's say you're writing your adventure and you want to start out with the aircraft on the runway ready for takeoff. All right, so we want to go in and create a new segment first, and we'll call that segment at runway. And if you want to call it like at runway 35L or something else a little bit more descriptive, of course, you could do that. And when we open it up, we see that it's empty. We want to go back to the previous segment, the initialization segment, and we want to select go to next segment from the FSC task menu. I probably should have mentioned a little earlier that when you click on a line, any of the lines, you will bring it. That's how you bring up the FSAC task menu. So now we want to go to the next segment, and I'll go ahead and close it and remind you that whenever you create a new segment, you'll need to refresh the browser. And the reason for that is that when you want to go to the next segment, you want that new segment that you created to show up in this list. Just before we refresh the browser, at runway was not listed. We had to refresh the browser in order for it to show up. All right, so we select at runway. So now when the script runs, it'll set the segment debug setting to 1. and it will set the flight segment, that is the current segment, to add runway. So in the add runway phase, we can start to begin writing out code. So let's say, well, the first we want to do is turn on the landing lights, perhaps. Maybe another feature we want to turn on, all the strobes. Okay. We may also want to set some of the control features, such as flaps. So we select flaps handle position indent, and each indent corresponds to one flap setting. On the stock Boeing 737 aircraft that we're going to use in this demo, a setting of 3 corresponds to flaps 15. So we enter that in. We should be good there. Something else we may want to do is to maybe set the engines. You don't have to, but if for some reason you wanted to, you select engine 1 for the 737, and of course 737 has 2 engines, so we'll want to set the second one. So we go back to engines, engines throttle thrust, and this time select engine number 2 and enter in 75% for it also. So far at runway, we have we're turning on the landing lights, turning on the strobes, setting the flaps to 15 by providing the number 3 in that setting, and we're setting the throttle to 75% on engine 1 and engine 2. All right. Perhaps we may want to add in a little message also. And we may be prepared to start another segment of code. So let's say that the aircraft is starting to roll and we want to do callouts as the aircraft makes its way down the runway for takeoff. So we'll want to create a new segment, call it runway roll perhaps. And we need a condition to know when the aircraft is starting to roll. So we select aircraft ground speed, get aircraft ground speed, and we'll just say, well, if it's the ground speed is greater than 5, then the aircraft is starting to make its way down the runway. So if aircraft ground speed is greater than 5, we're going to go to the next segment. Now at this point, I'm sure you've noticed that the header at runway and this inline on line 13 have both turned pink, and that there's a little flag to the extreme right of line 13. Well, that's an indication that we have an if condition without a corresponding end if. You'll need an end if to close the if statement. So we click on line 13 again to bring up FSAC task menu, and we select end if. And it inserts the end if just ahead of the end if segment because that's the line we clicked on. And now the header is its normal light blue color, and the end if segment is green. So next we want to go ahead and sandwich I'll go to next segment in between the if statement. Okay. So now we have an if statement. If the ground speed is equal to 5, then it will go to the next segment. But setting ground speed equal to 5 It's not the best way to actually test that condition. A better way would be to say if the aircraft ground speed is greater than 5. All right. So I want to get rid of the aircraft ground speed equals 5. So I just click on that line and select delete. And we're left now with the aircraft ground speed greater than 5. And if the aircraft ground speed is greater than 5, then we go to the next segment, and I selected the wrong one right here. And that's because I forgot to refresh the browser. Okay, so let's do that again. And there's runway roll and insert. And once again, we can delete the at runway. All right, everything is good. So at this point in the flight, we should be on the runway roll segment. And we'll just enter in a little message to display starting runway roll. So at this point in the adventure script, we should have the landing lights turned on, the strobes turned on, flaps set to 15, engines 1 and 2 set to 70% thrust. We're going to show a message, welcome to this demo adventure. The script will then go to the next segment, which is runway roll. And once the aircraft begins to move and its ground speed is greater than 5 knots, then the adventure should show the message starting runway roll. So the next step is to download what we have now in the script. So we click the download FSAC script, open it up, and we're going to save it in the flight simulator file. And let's give it a different name for test purposes. Call it FSAC demo. Just to match everything up. And when you first create your script and you have a flight file that you want to match it up with, you need to open up the flight file in Notepad again. And enter in the line ABL script. And then the name of the ABL file with the extension ABL. So we downloaded the FSAC script, we renamed it to FSAC demo, and we added ABL equals FSAC demo in the Microsoft Flight Simulator flight file. So now this flight file is associated with the ABL script. And save. And now when I bring up FSAC demo, which is the flight file, it should load with the script, and we shouldn't see any errors at all. All right, and so you can see the banner for FSAC, and there's a little welcome message. You can look up at the top at the lights, you can see that landing lights are turned on and the strobe is turned on. Over toward the right, you can see that flaps are set to 5. And you can see that the engines have automatically revved up to 75%. All right, so I'll go ahead and get the aircraft rolling. Of course, I could have also entered in a command to test when the brakes are released and act on it accordingly. And you can see that once the aircraft reached 5 knots, uh, we did see the starting runway roll message that we entered into FSAC. So that's just a start. Just to make sure that that the ABL script will run in Flight Simulator. And we can proceed to enter in different commands based upon the adventure scenario we want to write. So let's do a few other things here. Let's set our standby frequency on the radio to 1110.3. And of course, after setting it, the radio to the standby frequency, we'll then want to flip it. So we go back in the VOR and select flip. We also may want to start doing a few more callouts. So let's say if the aircraft is starting to make its way down the runway and the ground speed is at 40 knots, then we can send a message. And of course, some people like to spell it. And of course, we need to close it with an indef. That way, once the aircraft has reached 40 knots, the 40 knots message will appear in Flight Simulator. Okay, next, let's look at some other settings we can play with. Let's look at failures. So again, let's say we're going to look at the ground speed again. And we'll say if it's greater than 70, then we'll fail something. So let's fail an engine. And we can select, let's select engine 2. So now, once the ground speed is greater than 70 knots, we will fail engine 2. And indef. And let's go ahead and test it in Flight Simulator once again. Because we already downloaded the script, we don't have to do it again. What we can do instead is scroll down to the bottom in this text area and click on Generate in Progress ABL script. And that will download the code into this text box. And the second step is to click Copy Contents, which copies the content. And you can go back into the ABL file. This is the ABL file that we downloaded. And we can just select everything and delete it. And paste the text that that we retrieved when we clicked on the Copy Contents link. And then, of course, save it. Go back to our flight. Again, there should not be any errors when it loads. Okay, the flaps are back at 5. And I just release the brakes. We're starting to roll. There's our starting runway roll message. And of course at 40 knots. And we just lost engine 2. And that's pretty much it. We can look at some of the other segments in a different script, and you can see how lengthy it can get. But we're doing certain things such as checking to see if the aircraft is maintaining the correct heading, if it's lined up with ILS. If its speed is too high, we can send a message in Flight Simulator to reduce airspeed. But that's pretty much the gist of it. It should be pretty simple. If you have the idea of what you want to do in your script, it's just a matter of selecting the commands. So that's it for now. I'll have other videos available very soon, so please stay tuned. Thank you. Bye-bye.